So today I've got some good news, some bad news, and some good news. Good news, I've got a new YouTube intro. Thanks for editing that together for me, Marco. You rock, dude. Now the bad news. UPS has smashed several packages that I sent in July, including this raptor bust and a set of gates. UPS's automated customer service is absolute dog shit, so I'm going to work on replacing these. And that brings us back around to the good news. I have a good excuse to paint another raptor bust. I asked the owner of the smashed raptor bust how he'd like his replacement painted, and he said he'd like it based off of the JP3 React Attack Velociraptor. Once upon a time, I did a Hammond Collection raptor with a similar paint job. Because the React Attack Velociraptor doesn't have a very detailed paint job, we're going to be going for more cool than accurate. I just used a normal paint brush for the base coat this time instead of the airbrush. I'm using khaki for the base coat, but it turned out a lot more yellowish than I was originally anticipating, but that's fine. We'll take care of that in the next step. Now that the base coat is nearly done, we'll move on to the next step. I'm going to hit this whole thing with a severely watered down combination of warm buff and country gray. That's going to severely tone down the yellow from the original base coat. It's also going to get into all of the nooks and crannies on this beautiful sculpt and help us to show off that detail a little bit more. After all that watery gray dries, which is instant thanks to the magic of video editing, I'm going to go ahead and dry brush it with Beachcomber Beige, which is a new color for me. That'll help to show off some of the raised details, as well as adding a little bit more warmth to the base coat that we lost when we put that gray on it. Now that I'm happy with the color of the base coat, we can do more interesting things, like adding more colorful colors. A great place for more colorful colors is around the eyes. Again, we're not going for total accuracy with this raptor, we're going for more cool. So I've darkened up some tapestry wine, and we're going to use that for the eye socket. One of the features of the React Attack Velociraptor is some really dark diagonal lines going across the face and jaw. So I'm just blocking those in roughly right now. To do this, I'm using a mixture of burnt umber and black. And because I'm not going for total accuracy again, I'm kind of making this up as I go along. Maybe we'll start doing some stripes on the neck. Yeah, stripe seems like a good idea. Probably ought to paint the right eye socket to match the left one so it doesn't run around looking like it's got a black eye or something. So we're actually going to skip a step on this video because I forgot to hit the record button. But as you can see by looking, I just added a horizontal stripe along the neck that just goes perpendicular to those vertical stripes. Now I'm taking one of my favorite tools, a toothpick, and I am adding a ton of dots and freckles around the patterns that I've already put on there. This is just going to help those patterns look a little bit more randomized and natural. It's also a good opportunity to go in and pick out some of those individual scales, especially around the lip line. While I like to keep the overall pattern symmetrical, I like for all the freckles and dots to be much more asymmetrical and random. I'm going to continue to do these dots and freckles over the entirety of the model, but concentrating them mostly in higher densities around where the main pattern is. Now that the freckles are done, I'm going to go over with an airbrush. It's loaded with just burnt umber. I haven't darkened it, I haven't added any other colors, so it's much more brown. It's just going to help to kind of fade those stripes a little bit into the base color, but still keep that dramatic shift between the overall base color and patterns. Just ties it in a little bit nicer. And I'm going to do this over the entirety of the model on all of the patterns. Once that's done, I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to hit that eye socket that we previously painted tapestry wine with a black wash. We'll still see the tapestry wine coming through on there, but it's going to help tie it in with the rest of the patterns. Once that's done, I'm going to take the same watered down black and I'm going to go down that horizontal stripe along the neck. Because that stripe is already very dark, it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb, but it does add a little bit more gradient in the color on those patterns. One of the other features of the React Attack Velociraptor toy is it has a lot of red along the top of its snout and back. But because this is a more realistic model and we want it to look a little bit more realistic, I haven't used a bright red. Instead, we're just using our old friend Tapestry Wine. And just look how well Tapestry Wine and Burnt Umber play together. If any two colors were good friends, it was probably Tapestry Wine and Burnt Umber. Right now I'm going over this with a wet brush to just kind of tie in that Tapestry Wine with the Burnt Umber stripe. This is where using that black on the horizontal stripe is really going to pay off. This is one of those points of deviation from the React Attack Velociraptor. I'm adding the horizontal stripe that we see along the male raptor's flank in Jurassic Park 3. Instead of doing it as a solid stripe though, I'm doing it as a series of dots and freckles. No particular reason, I just think it looks cool. The color I'm using is a combination of warm buff and country gray. This time leaning more towards warm buff than country gray. Fun fact, this Velociraptor has a right side in addition to the left side, so we should probably do that pattern on this side too. Now on to the next step. If I had planned ahead, I probably would have done this first. But I didn't, so here we are. Right now I am painting quills that I designed and 3D printed. I should have added these to the model before we even started painting, but I didn't. I wasn't even sure I was going to do the quills, but I decided it was an integral enough part of the React Attack and Jurassic Park 3 male Velociraptors that it had to have quills. So we're just going to have to do it at this point since we can't go back in time. I printed the quills in an off-white, then I painted them in an off-white, and now I'm adding a very dark burnt umber stripe going horizontally across each of the quills. If you have never bought Milliput, I highly suggest that you buy some Milliput. I don't know how I would have made it this far without Milliput. Because there's so much detail and so much texture on this Velociraptor model, there was no way that I could design all of these quills to sit flush in between all of those folds of skin. Fortunately, our old pal Milliput has come to my rescue. Once I've installed what I decided was the appropriate number of quills, I took some of that darkened umber paint and I used it to paint over all of the Milliput because the Milliput is a dull yellow which sticks out like a sore thumb. And the only thing that really should be sticking out like a sore thumb is a sore thumb. But Velociraptors don't have thumbs. Okay, onto the inside of the mouth. The inside of the mouth is a mixture of classic caramel and metallic red. And it is extremely straightforward. We just paint the inside of the mouth with a brush. To make the tongue stand out just a little bit, we just added a little bit higher ratio of the metallic red to that classic caramel, and then we just go in and paint the tongue. Because I've been using Tapestry Wine all day, and because the React Attack Velociraptor is a much brighter red, I decided to do a little bit of bright red dry brushing just to help to highlight the red a little bit here. Well, I forgot to hit record and I painted the eye red. Anyways, now we're just running a purple wash over the inside of the mouth. That's going to help it look a little bit more mouthy. It's a bit tough to see here, but I'm about to paint the teeth. I'm just using a mixture of antique parchment and golden sunset. I'm going to add a reference pupil and some black veins on the eyeball now. I also added some yellow around the pupil. I'm just going to go in and add some more detail on that eyeball, just using different colors of oranges, reds, and yellows. Once I'm done messing around with the eyeball, we'll go ahead and throw some gloss on the inside of the mouth because, well, the inside of the mouth is kinda glossy. Once the inside of the mouth is done, we're gonna move on to the eyeball. For that, we're gonna use UV resin. It's pretty straightforward, just paint it on and then hit it with a UV light. We're gonna do this to both eyes. Now that the raptor's got shiny new eyes, I think we're gonna call it done. Well, that's it for the day. I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. And let me know in the comments what kind of videos you'd like to see in the future. Repaints, modifications, let me know. and I will catch you guys in the next one.